Hello and welcome to the World Football Show here on Sports Tonight Live. I'm Mina Rzouki and I'm joined by my usual co-host, Gabriele Marcotti. Hello, Gab, how are you?
Hello, very well, very well.
And of course, we've got our guest who's always with us now. It's Raphael Honigstein. Hi, Raph, how are you?
Mina.
That seems like a very strange hello. Today we're discussing all our usual teams, including some different leagues this time round. But we're going to start off with my favorite league, which is, of course, Serie A, because of all the drama that happened. Gabriele.
Well, it was remarkable because top of the table clash. I thought it was a phenomenal game. AC Milan and Juventus at the San Siro, and it was entirely overshadowed, I think, by two things. One, something completely absurd. Soli Montari heads the ball clearly across the Juve goal line. Gigi Buffon palms it back out. The linesman, for reasons known only to him, doesn't see it. I mean, it looked to me like the referee was going to give the goal.
Didn't he point to the centre circle, the ref?
He was pointing somewhere. I mean, we assume it was to the center circle. He hasn't spoken about it. But, you know, obviously you expect the referee to defer to the line, to his assistants in those situations. And, I mean, the guy just got it wrong. His career's basically over at this point. But, of course, that infuriated AC Milan, and I think understandably. Later in the match, Juventus had a goal disallowed for offside, which should have stood. But, I mean, I think it was one of those things that definitely should have stood, but it's more difficult to call. But after the game, it's just the bad blood. And I think, you know, I've been a very harsh critic of Juve in the past, and there's people at Juve who I don't think behave properly, starting from Andrea Agnelli. Beppe Marotta certainly didn't help the situation. However, in this situation, I think Milan's continuous whining and moaning about this, and you know, they on their website they put pictures of supposed fouls by Juve players that weren't given. Juve then responded in kind. It just put this very poisonous cap over the game, and it really shouldn't have been.
You see, my only issue with this is that, you know, I understand why they're angry, because I would be angry too. You know, I was angry about the disallowed goal for Madrid too. What I don't understand is how about 8 people came out to speak against Antonio Conte and against Juventus for whinging about refereeing decisions, and everyone kept saying, oh, they're human, and you're not acting like a big club, and they went ahead and did the same thing exactly, you know. Where are Roberto Donadoni's comments where this is so nauseating to see, you know? I just think that it's a bit hypocritical at the moment to judge Juventus when everyone seems to go down the same route eventually. When they are under pressure, it's much easier to be classy when you're winning.
No.
What did you make of Buffon's comment? I mean, he was very honest, saying, I didn't realise it was over the line, but even if I had realised it was over the line, I wouldn't have told the referee. I think yeah, but he got also some criticism for
Buffon
that.
got absolutely crucified for that.
Captain, he's the national team captain.
And that's in keeping, of course, with Prandelli's whole thing about how, you know, the ethical code, and you know, that's why Balotelli, for example, wasn't called up to the national team and so on. I think it's way out of line. I think the guy's being honest. It's after the game, you know, move on. I mean, I'm very willing to give him a pass on that point.
I also think the fact that Thiago Silva, who's my favourite Milan player, came out and said, hey, I do the same thing. And he's, for me, a pillar of respect, one of the greatest players. And he said he'd do it himself. And I think it's, you know, it's only fair to say, I'm not going to bury my team.
Right. Where do you think that leaves Juventus in terms of the momentum? Because, of course, you know, they came back very strongly and they got the draw. But did it, do you think, also put some doubts into their mind of whether they have enough firepower? I think, personally, watching that game, that perhaps they missed a trick in the winter break. Any half-decent striker they could have brought in would have strengthened them, and they didn't really do that.
Henry Borriello.
No, well, it's a very handsome Borriello, but still.
Very inept Borriello.
Well, but I think, I mean, I don't think there's a seed of doubt in their mind that wasn't there before. I mean, they've been very clear about this. Conte, you know, has come out and he said that. And I don't think he's just playing games. I mean, apart from the midfield, which I think is very good, and the goalkeeper, I'm not even sure about the defense and the strikers. I think there's at least half a dozen teams in Serie A who I would say have better strikers than Juve, you know, as a unit. But I think it's, well, I think it's the opposite here. I think actually what we've seen is this belief that even against better players, you can outrun them and you can outlast them. And that's what happened against Milan. You know, for the first hour or so, I thought it was all Milan. And Juve just kept plugging away, and ended up with a draw.
I think also what's important to note about Juventus is that they had a rhythm established by playing those, that 4-3-3 with having Pepe, Vucinic and Matri up top. Quagliarella and Borriello just don't work, and I think he recognised that, and we only really saw a huge shift when the tactics changed and when these players weren't, when Vucinic was introduced, Pepe was introduced, and of course Matri. And I think that Matri's the only one at the moment who seems to be converting their chances.
Even then, it takes him about 4 or 5.
Yeah, but still, I mean, the point.
But 2 shots, 2 goals.
But I'm sorry, but Mina, but the point still stands. I mean, Juventus are very much in the running this year. Everyone else looks a little bit weak. Milan, by far the best team, but still they've had problems. Why not go and seize the initiative and bring in someone who will help you out in January? I mean,
Juventus has been losing, has been hemorrhaging money. They do try to run themselves like a business, and they're in this difficult knife edge where, having to rebuild the team every sort of 18 months or so means you just lose more and more money. My understanding is they were in a situation where obviously they had to farm out, Toni, Iaquinta, and Amauri, get those off the wage bill. They needed another body in. I think with Borriello was a take it or leave it situation. And I think they also thought that, Matri and Quagliarella, they're kind of in-betweeners, in the sense that I think they are very good players, but they're not players who are necessarily going to put Juve over the top. And so somebody like that, maybe what you do is, at the end of the season, Quagliarella or Matri, you look to sell them, bring some cash in. Whereas if you bring in the replacement now, if you bring in a better player now, these guys don't play the rest of the year, and then you're stuck with another Iaquinta Mauri situation.
But you might win the Scudetto.
You might do, actually. That's really fun. There was a line in Gazzetta that said they have a star in midfield, Pirlo. They have a star in the back, which is Buffon, but they don't have a star north of Pirlo, and that's very true. So effectively, they will do that. There are apparently comments that they've already bid 40 million on Higuain for the summer, but I think what they're planning on doing is just getting past now and then looking to do something different for the summer when Champions League is available.
Now, I'm sure that there's been news breaking all day because it's come through in drips and drabs, and who better to bring it for us than the man we like to call Tancredible, Tancredi Palmeri.
Hello, can you hear us, Tancredi?
Buonasera from Milano.
Buonasera.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Tell us about the breaking news with regards to Milan and Juve.
Yes, indeed. I'm sorry to interrupt the tactical talks and actually also financial, as Gabriele was perfectly quoting. But the breaking news is of a few minutes ago, really few minutes ago, because the Sport Justice has given the judgment over all the cases that were breaking out after Milan-Juventus. Juventus, I just resume in a few seconds, Juventus accused first Mexes and then Montari in 2 different moments of punching a Juventus player. Then Milan answered on his official site saying that Pirlo, Andrea Pirlo as well, can you believe it? Milan accusing Andrea Pirlo of punching Van Bommel. Well, so the Sports Justice now has said his verdict. Philippe Mexes received a ban of 3 games, and instead Pirlo and Montari were completely cleared of any allegations that, in my opinion, if I can say, in the case of Montari, it is a bit strange because exactly in that footage, more than all the others, was clear that at least 2 or 3 times Montari tried or target Lichtsteiner with elbow and punching him. By the way, so the final result of this second half of Milan-Juventus is 3 games ban for Mexes, 0 for Pirlo and Montari.
Okay, so, but again, breaking this down, I mean, you're saying Montari should have had a ban as well. If you ban 2 Milan players and no Juve players, you have a situation where you-know-who and his televisions go absolutely demented. They've already gone demented. They will go demented over Mexes. Personally, the Pirlo thing, I watched the video. To call that an elbow is absolutely ridiculous.
You see, I didn't see that. What was it like? Was it a clear...
He's running alongside Van Bommel.
Okay.
And they're shoulder to shoulder. It's not... I mean, not to mention that Van Bommel is about 50 times harder than Pirlo, but
and Gab, let me add one thing. In the in the quotes blog that I keep on Gazzetta that is released every Monday, not just to advertise me. But I opened today with this quote from Ibrahimovic of 2 months ago. It was given to I think it's a Dutch newspaper. It's called Mercure Online, where this is very strange to read this 2 months after, where Ibrahimovic, talking about Van Bommel, is saying, the guy is always very hard on the pitch. When you touch him, he's just melting down. So
there you go. But Tancredi, what do you think first the non-sporting legacy, I'm sad to say, of this, because we were talking about this before, some of this bad blood which has erupted, I think, over the past month, because I think it's been a tremendous season in Serie A. We were returning to some sort of mortality. Of normality, rather. We've had the mortality all along, sadly. But, one theory is that on the Juve side, well, actually, not just the Juve side, but one down-the-road theory which I read today is that Juventus, partly fueled by Andrea Agnelli and his lawsuits, feel that Serie A owes them something, and the rest of Serie A also still feel that Juventus owe them something. So you've got a situation where both sides feel that they're in credit, and as soon as a referee makes a mistake, it sort of gets played into this narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is that in 15 seconds, just to resume to people that don't remember that, Juventus received was relegated, and 2 Scudettos were taken away. Now, Juventus fans feels that they feel that they've been robbed, that was not right. The other side of Serie A fans feel that Juventus is still the same old Juventus. So, as you said, it's this kind of break that is never solving. And of course, Andrea Agnelli and the Juventus club suing the Italian Football Federation, or trying to sue Italian Football Federation for something like 404 million euros, for sure is not helping to solve this situation. Now, I must say, just one thing, I must say that so far, this year, the work of the referees was very difficult, very hard, but all in all, much better than in the past year. So there was not something unbelievable. And honestly, what happened in Milan Juventus is just denounce all the nervosism of both the managements that feels that not at all they want to lose this Scudetto, especially Juventus that got a hunger of 7 years.
I want to speak to you just really to wrap this up, because we've been talking about it too much, but I feel as a Juventus fan that I'm going to explain this to you. For me, what I think is why I do sometimes feel that we are indebted. I do think that Agnelli has acted badly about this and the suing, and I do think Beppe Marotta's comments sort of show Juventus to be a small club at times with the way they handle this. However, it did come out at the time that everyone seemed to be cheated. There was a ruling that said, well, we've passed the statute of limitations, so we can't do anything. Thus, Juventus fans do feel that they've been robbed. It's taken them so long to rebuild. That's no excuse, but I do think they have a right to say we're angry with the officiating, just the way that Inter did when they had so many penalties given against them. I don't think, of course, all that happened afterwards is fair, but as we've seen now with Milan, they're also getting angry.
This is a huge story, and
it really is.
And I take your point. We should probably move on. Just my own little thing. I just find it kind of funny that it wasn't just Juventus who were found guilty in Calciopoli.
No, it was
everyone. Of course, well, no, it wasn't everyone either.
Mainly
some people
everyone.
simply got screwed.
So what, Inter was innocent?
No, I would say certainly Roma was innocent. But let's not get sidetracked. But I was saying,
but Luciano Spalletti.
leaving aside Luciano Spalletti,
yes.
The poor man has to live in St. Petersburg.
Yes,
but
of course.
Milan were also found guilty. So this idea that these guys, it's kind of like it's a pot and kettle situation.
Yes, but Milan were gifted 7 penalties in 9 games. That was the difference.
The fact that Juve fans continue counting tells you about their state of mind.
I'm not telling you that. I think that we would. I think Juventus were helped against Cagliari. I'm saying that there were things. It evens out in the end.
I'll come back in a couple of minutes.
Let's wrap up here. I want to ask you though about if Rafi's already smiling, let's make him laugh even more by bringing up Inter and Claudio Ranieri, who Inter traveled to Napoli. Ranieri mixed it up again. Two different formations in the first half. 4-3-3, fluid front three. Snyder, Forlan, and Milito up front.
Back in the hole.
Who never actually played together before, and that was a complete mess. So in the second half, what do? You take off the two creative players, Snyder and Forlan. You send on Cordoba. You switch to 3-5-2, which I don't believe they've ever played under Ranieri, and hope to get crosses in. He's in trouble, isn't he?
Well, Gabriele, you are giving me a news. Did Inter travel to Napoli? Seriously? Because honestly, I didn't see anything there out on the pitch. I mean, because what happened yesterday, there is also a small news here, because half an hour ago spoke President Moratti. He was asked about Ranieri's future, Inter's future, and he said that he didn't see at all the reaction that was supposed to be from Inter, that he thinks that still is good to go on with Ranieri, but that he wants to have a talk to check the mood of the manager and of the team. This means that really the time of Ranieri is expiring. I don't think that it's very hard. If he will go out against Marseille in Champions League, honestly, I hardly see there will be still a future for him. As you assumed, what happened yesterday in Napoli, Gabriele, and all guys, I mean, it's unbelievable, really. Taking out Snyder and Forlan, putting Cordoba, and Pazzini. You should have seen the header.
But that's exactly how I felt.
The header that Pazzini missed in the last 10 minutes. I mean, it was something like, okay,
yeah, but you
it's
could
really
see,
not.
Yeah,
not
I know.
moment.
I could almost see why he switched to a 3-5-2. It's not their right formation, but I'm going to have to say bye to you now because we've run out of time. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Incredible. Have a great night. I do kind of see why he switched to the 3-5-2.
He wanted to go with more freshness, more directions. Nagatomo Faroni down the wing,
And have something
generate
on the
crosses.
flanks.
But the thing is, you can only change your game plan so many times. I don't really agree with Tancredi Manisciani. Is he will last the season, but it's pretty obvious.
Come what may, you think?
Come what may, yeah. But it's pretty. They don't even do a shot at third, even if they bring in God to manage them. So frankly, at this point, just do what you can in the Champions League. Accept your lot in life and bring in a new manager next year.
Okay, well, that's all we have time for on Italy. We're going to just probably engage in a punch-up after this, but come back to us and we'll be talking about Spain, Germany, and so much more. So we'll see you after the break.
We're back. Now, we talked about controversial refereeing before. We could talk about controversial refereeing now in Spain. We probably will. But I'd much rather be all peace and love and talk about two phenomenal goals from Cristiano, which we'll get to in a bit, and from Leo Messi, which, Mina, decided the Atletico Madrid game.
This is the thing. I mean, I felt actually a little bit sorry for Atletico Madrid because I thought they played in the beginning a terrible game and then afterwards adjusted it, and then there was just this moment of magic for Messi that changed the entire face of the game.
But Raf, when you saw that, okay, very well executed, but the goalkeeper was giving instructions. You have any ethical problems with quickly taking free kicks?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think when Henry did it for Arsenal all those years ago, there was this argument, you should always favour the attacking side. So even if, the opposition suffer a little bit, you still sort of, within the spirit of the game, saying, it's their own fault if they foul and then don't recover quick enough. But I know what you mean. I think it does rankle somehow a little bit that you kind of just take advantage of your position being slightly slow to get started again. I mean, it's not. I don't think he will feel that this is sort of the goal that he'll frame and put in his living room out of his. I don't know how many he scored, 800 or.
He did take it very well, but from when you saw Barca making the decision, no Piqué at the back. But beyond that, I mean, this was the real deal. They were all there. Xavi, Cesc, Iniesta, Busquets.
I'm sorry, I didn't think it was a very good performance at all. They looked uncomfortable with all the heavy pressing that they were up against. I do want to, just a quick question. He did seem to get the permission of the referee that he was going to play a
Yeah,
fast.
of course.
So like, in hindsight, well, I mean, not in hindsight, he has every right to do that.
No, nobody's disputing his right. The question is, it's the
it fair?
Corinthian
Is it
spirit.
ethical?
It's sort of like when, it's like Mertesacker and was it McLean from Sunderland? When your opponent collapses in front of you, should you keep playing? If you're a McLean type person, that's what you do. If you're like the legendary Pau Di Canio, you don't because you're a sportsman. But back to Spain. So was it a case of Barca not working, or was it a case of Simeone and Atleti creating trouble for them and just passing their way out of the press?
It just seemed to be when they started out, Atletico Madrid were only concerned with defending, and then they conceded a goal, and it sort of changed the game because they went for it. They started to go back to their heavy pressing, and that really put Barcelona under pressure. Which is they seemed to play the perfect game that would put Barcelona on the back track. And there was a lot of refereeing. I'm sorry, that really changed the face of the game.
But honestly, Mina, I think it's the same story that we've seen all season. They just cannot raise themselves, especially in this situation. Real Madrid is already so many points ahead. They won again. To come up against a team that make it difficult for you, just think, oh,
can't be bothered
why?
with this.
Why? Even if we win, we're still 10 points behind. So that is their problem. That's going to stick with them until the Clásico. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to give up more points in the meantime.
I mean, we talk about it as if it's a problem. I mean, just when they won away at Atletico Madrid. I mean, I know like the bar's been put so high that we think like, oh look, they're 10 points back. Look at these fools. But still, it's a bit special seeing that. Leo Messi, 103 goals in his last 100 games. No?
Yeah, what was special was Ronaldo's goal.
It was special. And we're going to talk to Tim, who got to see both of them. Tim Stannard, you know him as La Liga Loca. Tim, let's get this out of the way at the top. You were at both games. What was more special, Cristiano's back heel or the Messi free kick?
I think it was Messi's free kick just because it was a mad angle and it was one of those sort of moments that was quite clever and helped him win the game. I heard you speaking just a few minutes ago talking about the Corinthian spirit. Since when has Diego Simeone ever given anyone any sportsmanship or Corinthian spirit?
Spoken like an Englishman. Lay off, Diego. Come on, he's made it fun for you in Atleti, right?
He has.
This is what you're right about.
Job there, but there's no, he's not one of those who say, well, that wasn't sportsmanlike, because you just have to kind of sit there and go Beckham in the press conference after, and then see what the reply is. So he'll do anything to get a victory, and so did Barcelona. So it's a valid goal, fair enough. But Ronaldo's one was special as well. There were two very special games, but particularly enjoyed the Rayo match on Sunday. It was fantastic.
This was the David Beckham, of course, who kicked him back in 1998 when England played Argentina. But no need to go back there; it's all on YouTube. But
I haven't forgotten.
Clearly. So Rayo, for those who don't know, Vallecas is. It's not even a suburb. It's kind of like the I don't know the Peckham of something of Madrid, except it's a real dump, and they have this tiny stadium. They used to not have enough fans, so they used to have this big wall of painted fans on one side who were two-dimensional. Now they have a few more fans, but it's a bit of a weird place to play, isn't it?
It was a fantastic game. But yeah, to give an idea, Vallecas is it's a neighbourhood just to the south of the centre. It's actually only about 6 stops from the centre, which is Seoul. So it's not major, not a major distance. But as you said, you come out the metro station and it's just there. It's a real old-fashioned stadium. It's a hard, tough, working-class neighbourhood that's really suffering in the economic crisis. So for the neighbourhood, the club is everything, and it's really sort of giving them something to dream about this season, and that's what they've done. Everyone expected them to go straight back down after going up for a season with their players going unplayed, but they're not that far from Europe at the moment, and they really gave Real Madrid a game yesterday. And perhaps the one person who enjoyed the match more than myself was Jose Mourinho. He was smiling, waving at the opposition fans, high-fiving the opposition coach at half-time, and he really, really enjoyed himself. You know what? He actually said we didn't deserve to win either. So these are 4 or 5 things I've never seen before.
But Tim, was he patronising them, or was he genuinely being nice to them? Because with really Jose, you cannot really tell sometimes.
No, he's been very kind about the club after it was 6-2 at the Bernabeu, and he said we didn't deserve to win 6-2. What a fantastic job! And he talks about how well the other manager's been doing, dragging this team up just through like spirit and hard work, basically, and motivation. And he says he admires them. They attack. They always play to win. And he just says, what fantastic fans. Why couldn't Real Madrid have fans like this? He said only 300 came to this game. Only 30 went to Getafe. This is in our city. Why? They said the fans need to do more. And that's why he waved at the Rayo ones. He really wants the crowd behind him, but he's never going to get that.
I'm a big fan of Rayo Vallecano, and I love the fact that Sandoval always plays for the win. For me, I think that they have a team that could possibly challenge for Europe. I mean, with a coach who cares. They have a bad team, sorry. They have the coach that could challenge for Europe, rather. With the way that he plays his defense, the defensive unit is very strong. The attacking unit...
It's extremely positive. I spent an hour with him a couple of weeks ago just talking about football, really. He just goes on and on. He loves the game, and he really loves tactics. And he showed how you managed to hold off Barcelona for 40 minutes. And he says you must play every single game to win. Some people say, oh, the worst thing you can do is, I asked him about this, they said, people say the worst thing you can do against Real Madrid is score against them first. And he said, that's absolute nonsense. You score one, you score another, you score another. And if you don't win, no matter, but at least you try.
He's also like a really nice guy, very funny and tactically astute. Do you think that there's a possibility that he could possibly take over a bigger team after this adventure?
Definitely. I got a feeling that if things don't go too well for Unai Emery, perhaps at Valencia, this is a club we spoke about. I said, what would you do if you're in his situation? Because this is a club who never going to be bad enough to be fourth, never going to go top two and win the league. And he said, why not? Why can't you go into the season telling the players, you know what, we're going to try and win the league this season? He said it happened a few years ago under Rafa Benitez, and for him, everything is possible. And when you consider what he did last season, a whole year, he didn't get paid. He went to work on bicycle. Other players didn't get paid. So he believes completely that everything is possible in football with the right motivation. So I think he's going to go places.
Tim, this is all very Disney-esque. I think we all agree Sandoval is one of the good guys. Mourinho said they didn't deserve to win, but they were also pretty lucky. I thought Ramos could have easily been sent off, and that could have changed the whole game.
I think I agree with Mourinho that I think a draw was fair enough, especially right at the end. There was that chance in front of the goal. But yeah, Sergio Ramos, who was actually had a very good game, although he shouldn't have been on the pitch. This was his kind of game, balls coming in constantly and then heading them out, and he was very impressive at the back. But put that elbow in on Diego Costa, and the referee missed it, and the referee sent the wrong player off later on with Michu. And yeah, it should have been Real Madrid down to 10 men throughout most of the match, and that would have been a brilliant contest. It was already a good one.
Perhaps Barcelona should have gone down to 10 men too.
Yeah, that could have been a strategy. But Copa del Rey update, since we all... obviously, there's this dispute. They don't want it to Bernabeu. They're redoing the toilets, some silliness like that. They obviously can't have it in Barcelona, and they can't have it at the Mestalla. Here's an idea put forth by our mutual friend Guillaume Balaguer. Have it at Wembley. Now, I've brought this up before, but have you started a campaign yet? Has anybody come up with any good reason not to have it at Wembley?
They're talking about Wembley. I think there's any idea, or Paris, seriously, because they're...
So it's working. The Balaguer's campaign is working.
At the moment, there's no date and no venue for the Copa del Rey final. And one possibility, if Barcelona are in the Champions League final, then the date of the Copa del Rey final might be, I think it's a Friday, the 25th of May. The day after that, Spain have a friendly. And there may be one or two Athletic Bilbao Barcelona players who are needed in that friendly who won't be there. So the FA's utter incompetency in Spain really, really could cost Spain's European chances in the summer. It's an absolutely ridiculous affair.
Wow, just imagine if they got the World Cup. Tim, thank you so much for your time. That's Tim Stannard. You know him, of course, as La Liga Loca, premium Spanish blogger. You know, this business with the Cup final, I just find it extraordinary that there was no plan B.
I find so too. But I think it's a bit harsh to be unfair on, you know, I mean, I can understand Real Madrid for not wanting to do that, for not wanting to... You don't? You think that they should be offering?
No, they are being petty and stupid, right? That's what you were going to say.
I mean, look, if they happen to be in the capital of Spain. You know, that's where very often you'll find the cup final. Now, the fact that they've got knocked out, all of a sudden they realise that the toilets are not in good order. It's a little bit strange.
Wasn't it in 2004 that the Camp Nou wasn't being offered either when they were playing against...
But it doesn't matter. I mean, now 8 years down the line...
No, it's funny how when it's Madrid's turn, it's two wrongs don't make a right and they should be the bigger man. But when we turn the situation, it's, oh, well, we can understand Barcelona's reasoning. We can never understand Madrid's.
Well, Liga fans, there you have it. Surrogate Real Madrid fan and surrogate Barcelona fan. We'll be back in a bit. All right, who's ready to get stuck into some German football? Yeah, look at Mina. She's excited already. No, actually, we will bring Mina around. I think this is our mission. By the end of the year, we want to bring Mina around, and we want Germany to be her fourth favorite European league? Yeah? After Italy and Spain? Is that doable? Fourth?
Yeah, okay, we can go for fourth.
All right.
Try anyway.
Raf, let's start with you. Big game, Bayern and Schalke. Now, we were all waiting for that reaction from Bayern. String of pretty horrible performances. I thought, not least in that second half against Basel in the Champions League. And it came without Toni Kroos, and it came with Frank Ribery. I want to start with you. Wasn't a surprise that Kroos was on the bench, yeah?
It was a bit of a surprise because, Kroos was really Jupp Heynckes' darling. Already when he was at Leverkusen, he really played him all the time. He enabled him to have his breakthrough as a player. And all the switches around, and even Robin being on the bench, came down to Kroos always having to be in the side. And Kroos had a particularly bad game in Switzerland, and from that point of view, it wasn't a surprise. But it was slightly surprising to see Luis Gustavo and David Alaba lining up in the middle, because it seemed a little bit, like a makeshift midfield for such an important game.
With Schweinsteiger out, we might see a bit of Timošuk action or something like that.
Well, Timošuk was also terrible in Switzerland. But I think Kroos, Kroos for some reason is not seen as a number 6 player when it comes to Heynckes, but is very much happy to play there under Löw for Germany. So I don't understand why we didn't see him and Gustavo. But as it was, the midfield worked really, really well.
Do you want to translate number 6 player for our Anglos out there?
Well, it's the number 6 player is either a sitting defender or can be a deep lying playmaker. So in the 4-2-3-1, he's one of the 2 guys in the D. But of course, in Kroos's case, he's never just standing in the D. He does
more of an
actually
8.
Go forward and give you a bit of box-to-box action. But it was interesting because the reaction really came, but it came courtesy, most of all, from Frank Ribery, who had an absolutely fantastic game, ran the show, popped up everywhere, even in his own box, which I don't think he has seen for over 18 months from close up. But he, he even came back to made an intervention when it really mattered, and even Müller, despite looking a little bit clumsy and not quite scoring, was a lot more involved than he has been for most of the season.
Fluffed a chance for the third goal. But Mina, when you see players like Frank Ribery at this stage of their career, all of a sudden turning it on, what's in your mind? Is it like, is there a new contract coming up? Or?
Yes, certainly, I think so. I mean, it looks like it's all of a sudden he's just popped up and been the most amazing guy to lead them forward. But I also wanted to quickly ask you about Robin, because it seemed to be that he was passing a lot more when he should have been taking shots and trying to prove that he is a little not selfish, Do you think that was the aim, to be I'm listening to management?
The problem is Robin is in 2 minds, because I think he knows, and everyone else knows, that he really is a one-trick pony. But the trick is very, very good, Unfortunately, most of the teams now double up on him, triple up on him, so the pass is always the better option, or most of the time it is the better option. But the pass doesn't work if the team doesn't actually play with him, and that's been the problem, because they give it to him, and too many times in the past, everyone else just waits for things to happen instead of moving into the space that he creates by dragging people to him. And he was a lot better. He combined really well with Ribery, who was moving flanks. He moved to the left as well. And I think he's just a little bit low on confidence. Plus, there is a question mark whether he's still quite the same player when it comes to the sort of the explosive 3 or 4 meters once he takes the ball. He used to run with all elbows and angular movement when he gets the ball. And that side of the game seems to have suffered a little bit. With all the injuries that he's picked up over the years. But I think he's coming back to his best, and I think that, Bayern as a club, despite his problematic standing in the dressing room, because, he's not the easiest guys to play with, I think as a club, they're trying hard to get him back to that level where he was, because they realise that one Ribery won't be enough. They really need him if they want to achieve anything.
I don't think Bayern probably not quite out of the woods yet, despite this one performance, but worth staying tuned. They're still behind because Borussia Dortmund won against Hanover. Now, this was interesting because this was another so-so less than brilliant performance from Borussia. In their defense, they lost Bender early on, and of course Götze is still out and whatnot. But I thought Hanover played it well, but it just wasn't clicking for Borussia.
I mean, they weren't entirely convincing, you're absolutely right. And you could say this has now been going back for a few weeks against Hertha. They were quite poor. But, they keep winning. And they score goals against the teams. They score goals against teams that make it very, very difficult. And Hanover are always hard to play against. And they very rarely make other teams look good. They're very destructive and very organised. So the fact that Dortmund just keep getting these results when they're playing well, but also when they're not playing well, you have to say the momentum is with them. This was their 7th win in a row. They're unbeaten in 17. difficult to dislodge them up there if they keep on winning.
Good news also from the bean counters, because, you know, for people out there who don't know, you look at Borussia Dortmund, you've got the gigantic stadium, you got 80,000 fans, you got the rising turnover, and you're asking, like, why are they such a chintzy club who don't spend money? And the reason is, of course, they're still paying some massive hangover for when they nearly became insolvent in 2002, I think it was. And they still have Sebastian Kehl there, of course, to remind them of that day.
Yeah.
But now things have turned. We knew they would turn over time, and this is hope, by the way, for everybody. Rangers fans out there, Portsmouth fans. Well, if you had an 80,000 seat stadium, I guess, and you were in Germany with lots of sponsors and whatnot. But they made a profit. They spent money on Royce. Are you Bayern fans a little bit worried here that this could be a great awakening and we shouldn't take it as read that, you know, Hummels will be sold and Götze is going to go?
Well, Hummels, you know, Hummels was an interesting case because he did have a release clause, and Bayern tried really hard, and he just turned them down flat. He said, "No, I want to stay." And you know, with Royce, it was a similar case. So Bayern are not used to that, but I think they are getting used to the idea that, as it was in the mid-90s, when Dortmund won two titles back-to-back and then went on winning the Champions League in Munich of all places, which really hurt. That you might have a similar scenario again. Dortmund really establishing themselves, and this time I think they're doing a lot smarter. You know, they're not spending money that they don't really have because they spent money that they made on the IPO. So it wasn't real money in a sense. Of course, you know, it cost real money, but the money was not created through income. It was created for a one-off. And of course, the costs kept on going, whereas the one-off money was gone. So it wasn't very smart business plan. But now, even with Royce, even with the money that they're spending, I think they're being very, very smart. And I think they also sense that this is a real window of opportunity this year, because Hans-Joachim Watzke, the Dortmund CEO, always talks about growing the brand and trying to attract more sponsorship, etc. If they were to win another title, I think it would really sort of underline the renaissance and says, you know, we are back as a club.
Certainly a key going forward will be hanging on to the Batman sound effect type duo of Klopp and Zorc, of course. But let's move on to Russia now. This is the 2011-12 season in Russia. It's this magical, monstrous 18-month season. They've decided to move from being a purely winter competition, and so to do that, they ought to make the transition. They've moved into sort of, I guess, the third phase now of the campaign, where the top sides have split apart. And a lot of the news, Anji, of course, picking up Gus Hiddink, as well as Christopher Samba. Andrei Arshavin also making his way back there. But we're joined now by Igor Monichev to go and sort of sift through this. Igor, first of all, Gus Hiddink. Now, we're all adults here. We know that people generally don't move to Anji because they want to help develop football in Dagestan, as Hiddink said. He's getting paid an enormous amount of money. Was there ever any sense that from the people there, maybe from Kerimov, that maybe this isn't such a good idea because this is clearly somebody who's only coming for the money. And he's only signed an 18-month deal?
Well, certainly there are lots of skeptics in this country about Hiddink's move. If you remember, not so long ago, everyone expected him to be a boss of Chelsea, and suddenly, after all his brilliant achievements with the Turkish team, no one is interested. And the best offer comes from Anji, of course, and people here say that Hiddink, as usual, as he did with the Russian national team last time, will come to Russia with two empty suitcases and come back with 2 suitcases packed with cash. And that was his main motivation for coming to manage the team. Because previously, on many occasions, he stressed that I'm not interested in managing a club in Russia. It's too far. My girlfriend can hardly stand staying at the 5-star Moscow hotels all the time. And I need to be much closer to her, to Holland. That's why Chelsea would be ideal. But in the end, he will end up still sitting in Moscow. But instead of coming here for maybe 3 days a month like he did managing the national team. He will have to manage a club, which is a completely different matter.
Igor, can I ask you, is he the right man to lead Angie, considering of his tactics and the fact that they have the 6+5 rule, that he has to find Russian talent as well? And I thought that at the time in his with the national team in Turkey that he made some wrong choices when it came to nurturing young Turkish talent. For example, sticking with Barak instead of promoting Yildirim. But do you think he's the right man to lead Angie and to grow this team further?
God only knows. You see, trouble was with the previous manager. Why he didn't came in at all? We did not actually expect him to come that early, because as you remember, Angie only a couple of months ago appointed a Russian manager, Yuri Krasnozhan, who is not very well known outside Russia. But Krasnozhan had an enormous trouble tackling, I mean, not exactly tackling, but in his relationship with these stars like Roberto Carlos and Samuel Eto'o. And that was his problem. I don't think Hiddink will have the same problem with anyone in the team. But you see, the Russian football is full of undercurrents, which Hiddink is not aware, not managing a club before. The Russian national team had a very high priority in everything. Angie is only one of the teams, and actually even getting into Eurocup zone would be an achievement for them. Their lineup seems to be quite good, but they only God knows how Hiddink is going to use the players.
Igor, I mean, can you just tell us a little bit, because Angie finished the first round, I think in 6th or 7th place. So
Yes.
to actually go and win this now is going to be very difficult. What is the minimum objective, do you think, for Hiddink?
The minimum objective set by that billionaire owner of the team, Suleiman Kerimov, flamboyant young man who suddenly fell in love with football and decided to invest millions and millions of pounds into an obscure club. His aim was initially to get Angie into the first 4 slots of the Russian table, and that is the way to get into Europe. And I think it's not changed with Hiddink coming. No one expects Angie to become the champions of Russia. They are still aiming at getting one of the 4, or maybe the 5th place. It greatly depends upon the UEFA ratings. Maybe the 5th place is going to be okay for them too.
Igor, sorry, we're going to have to leave it there. So sounds like 5th place, Europa League.
He could get away with it.
Not enough to excite Kerimov? I mean,
I wonder if he's got a release clause, Hiddink, for the summer. If they can even make some money on him, perhaps.
Release to go where? I don't know.
Chelsea.
I just say, like, I think he's one of the best tactical minds in the world, personally. But I think it's very depressing that he has not managed a top team in a top league since getting sacked by Real Madrid in February of 1999. With the exception, obviously, of the interim stint at Chelsea.
If you saw him with Turkey, his tactics were shocking, honestly.
Shocking. I think
Shocking.
that's the word you're looking for. All right. Well, we've covered Germany. We've covered Russia. We'll continue our Napoleonic theme, and we'll be back with France in a few minutes. Hello,
and welcome back to the World of Football show here on Sports Tonight Live. I'm Mina Rzouki, and now we're moving on to discuss France. And of course, there was a huge game, 4-4, at the same time that Milan Juventus was happening. What did you think of the game?
Well, I mean, it's a game where you've got 8 goals and people storming forward and comebacks and everything. Carlo Ancelotti nearly lost his first game since moving to Paris Saint-Germain, but the most dramatic of endings, Guillaume Moreau, the 93rd minute with PSG's goalkeeper Salvatore Sirigu hanging out in the opposing D, nails the perfect header. And it was usually just before that, Mathieu Bodmer, of course, is a former Lyon player, makes an absolute sitter one-on-one with Hugo Lloris. Of course, Lloris also made some fantastic saves as well. So it was an entertaining game, but you can also see why both these teams are just a long way away from being the finished article.
Lyon should have really held on for that. I mean, what did you think of that, Ralph? Did you feel sorry for
Well,
them?
I'm still shocked, and I wonder what Andy will say about this, that Liga is turning into this free-scoring, free-for-all, no tactics, let's all go and score goals kind of league.
No one knows how to defend.
For years and years, it was the lowest-scoring league in Europe.
And then, baboom.
And now, what's going on? What's going on, Andy?
Hello, Andy Brassel, how are you?
Hello, I'm well. How are you all?
Very well, thank you. Tell us, what is going on in response to Ralph's question there?
Well, Raf, one swallow doesn't make a summer. There were 8 goals in that game, and there were 7 in the previous 6 on that Saturday.
Right.
We were just lucky to get that game. That's what there is to it. I think it quite well sums up the Saturday, the ebb and flow of Ligue 1. You never really know what you're going to get, whether it's A grade or gristle.
What where does this leave my man Carlo? Because I thought Lyon initially played very well. There's no scenario where you concede 4 goals and you can be happy. And of course, you know, now that Montpellier have passed them again. But does he take any positives from that performance?
PSG.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they did, just because the last 2 games they've been outplayed in both of them by Montpellier and Lyon, who really should be a title contender. Their 2 things have really let them down. I think their inexperience, which means they've lost a few away games that they shouldn't have. They've lost 9 games already this season, which is more than they've lost for 12 years in a league season. You know, still only in February. And the other thing is their totally tatty defence. You know, I think Lyon would have blown away most teams in the first half of that. You know, they scored 3 brilliant goals in 5 minutes, which PSG couldn't really do that much about. They were just absolutely blown away, and I think that shows the quality that Lyon have and the team they could be, but that they're not. And you know, we know PSG have got a way to go in terms of in terms of becoming a proper team, and they showed that against Montpellier last week. But I think you know, you look at the equalising goals against Montpellier and this one on Saturday against Lyon, top quality. Again, I don't think Lyon could have really done that much about the equaliser. It's absolutely superb header by Warreau, and I think we talked about him a couple of weeks ago and how everyone said he looks like a spare part. He looks like someone who won't really last under Ancelotti and under this new glamorous regime. But in fact, he's, you know, maybe he's going to be his Drogba for the rest of the season.
Well, let's talk some Montpellier, because of course they're top of the league. Finally, we get there. Wanted to get to them last week, but of course, Rafi had to ask a silly, long-winded question, and we were denied our time with you. So please tell us about Giroud and Girard and all the wonderful things that behind Montpellier's rise to the top.
Yeah.
Well, of course, René Girard, the coach, he's got great experience, not just as an international player. He was a really important part of a great Bordeaux team. He was part of a good French team as well in the 80s. He made contributions to that, but he gave absolutely no quarter, and his team play like that as well. I think everyone looks at Montpellier and think, you know, they've got a small stadium, not loads of fans. Aren't they nice little underdogs? There's nothing nice about them. You know, they're really competitive, and that's why they're still up there. And they gave a good image of themselves, the way they played at Paris. But you know, they've got a bit of grit to add to that as well. But I think you look at some of you know, the backbiting that's been between them and PSG, them and Lyon. They're getting under the big boys' skin. I think it really means something. And I know Michel Bastos, after the Montpellier win over Lyon in January, which wasn't that much of a shock, and I think that shows how much Montpellier have come on. Bastos said he had absolutely no respect for Girard as a person, which I thought was fantastic. It shows how much Montpellier have wound the rest of the league up, and they've got quality all the way through. Yango Mbiwa, who's one of the best centre backs in the league. Giroud, of course, who's scoring all the goals. Younes Belhanda, terrific playmaker, who's got a lot more of a fine touch than his size would suggest. And funnily enough, he could be the North African superstar that PSG are looking for next season.
Well, that brings me to my question, really. Do you think that for them there's almost could be a curse of success, the way we've seen it with smaller teams in the past, where they do really well, they perhaps win even the title, but then completely get raided by everyone within and without the league, and then the dream finishes even before it's properly started?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, Raf. But I think Louis Nicolas, who's the club's rather pugnacious president, you might say, he'll not be worried about that. He'll be looking at the money, and he'll be looking at the Champions League money. For them, the title would be amazing, but it's all about top two. Their best players will go elsewhere. Yango Mbiwa has got just a year left on his contract after this season. He'll surely be snapped up by a Premier League side. Belhanda, we've already talked about. Olivier Giroud has drawn interest from all over Europe. Bayern Munich and Napoli sent scouts to look at him when they played at PSG last week. So these players will definitely go, and when they go, they'll have trouble replacing them with players of the same sort of value, and they'll end up just crying and banking the money and probably finishing 14th next season. But that's fine. They know that's how it is. And if you look further up, Lille lost 3 really important players in the summer, and Lille are a much more high-spec, ambitious club than Montpellier. They've got this terrific infrastructure. They're really well run. They're moving into this new 50,000 stadium in the summer, well ahead of Euro 2016. So, I mean, even that stage, Lille is a really, really long way off from Montpellier. But if they play it right, if they look after that money, maybe this is their first building step towards that sort of model, which Lille have to be for them.
So, Andy, in a word, who do you think would come third?
I still think Marseille have got something left in the tank. I mean, if you saw the Marseille against Inter game during the week that I was at, in fact,
that's not one word.
You'll be if you were awake until the end, you'll be aware of what most people who watch Marseille on a semi-regular basis are aware. They're very, very dull to watch. And Deschamps has completely defied everyone, like the fans, the sporting director, Jose Anigo, who he doesn't get on with at all, to play a more expansive game. So, his pig-headed response to that last summer was to buy 3 more defensive players.
So, Andy, who you have to give us one word.
Yeah, he voted for Marseille.
So that's it, Marseille. We're going to go with Marseille. But thank you so much for your time, Andy. I'm sure we'll be speaking to you next week.
Pleasure. See you soon.
Oh, yes, I hope to see you soon too. But of course, now we come back to the last part, which is obviously my favorite part, but we only have like a few seconds to talk about it. Because it's our, we have all our dream team, and now it's about the manager. And of course, you won.
So insular, the British view, dominating yet again.
Who are you calling British? I chose Sir Alex Ferguson.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously, the people that
can't think of any other coaches outside of the UK.
Yeah, the only managers I know are Sir Alex, Mourinho, and Hiddink.
What's really funny is actually Pep Guardiola didn't even get a mention there.
Yeah, that's not funny.
It is. Arrigo Sacchi, 15%. That was my vote. I'm a little disappointed that Il Trapp and Lippi weren't involved, but you happy with that? So Alex Ferguson, I reckon he's probably the
I think it could have been a lot worse.
You think
Sir Alex at the top?
I think it's a right bet. You obviously think so?
Well, I mean, I think so. I mean, look, it's so hard. You're judging different contexts, different, if Sir Alex Ferguson had left Aberdeen to go and join Leeds United, would he have won as much? I mean, who knows? But, I mean, I think all these names on this list are people who've obviously written the history of football, including Rinus Michels. I think we lost a little bit of an S there, but unless this is another dude, I'm not familiar with.
No. But that is unfortunately all we have time for. I'd like to thank my co-host, Gabriele Marcotti. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Pleasure as always.
Thank you to our guest, Ralph Honeystone. And, of course, we will see you next week for another episode of the World Football Show. Same time, same place, and, of course, same football chat. See you then.
Stay ahead of the game with Sports Tonight Live. Don't miss a thing. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Search for Sports Tonight Live on Facebook and like our fan page. Follow Sports Tonight TV on Twitter and tweet us your thoughts and opinions. Sports Tonight Live, it's the platform for the fans.
They have a star in midfield, Pirlo. They have a star in the back, which is Buffon, but they don't have a star north of Pirlo, and that's very true. So effectively, they will do that. There are apparently comments that they've already bid 40 million on Higuain for the summer, but I think what they're planning on doing is just getting past now and then looking to do something different for the summer when Champions League is available. Now,
I'm sure that there's been news breaking all day because it's come through in drips and drabs, and who better to bring it to us than the man we like to call Tancredible, Tancredi Palmeri.
Hello, can you hear us, Tancredi?
Buonasera from Milano. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Tell us about the breaking news with regards to Milan and Juve.
Yes, indeed. I'm sorry to interrupt the tactical talks and actually also financial, as Gabriele was perfectly quoting. But the breaking news is of a few minutes ago, really few minutes ago, because the Sport Justice has given the judgment over all the cases that were breaking out after Milan-Juventus. Juventus, I just resume in a few seconds, Juventus accused first Messes and then Montari in two different moments of punching a Juventus player. Then Milan answered on his official site saying that Pirlo, Andrea Pirlo as well, can you believe it? Milan accusing Andrea Pirlo of punching Van Bommel. Well, so the Sports Justice now has said his verdict. Philippe Messes received a ban of 3 games, and instead Pirlo
disallowed for offside, which should have stood. But I mean, I think it was one of those things that definitely should have stood, but it's more difficult to call. But after the game, it's just the bad blood, and I think, you know, I've been a very harsh critic of Juve in the past, and there's people at Juve who I don't think behave properly, starting from Andrea Agnelli. Beppe Marotta certainly didn't help the situation. However, in this situation, I think Milan's continuous whining and moaning about this, and you know, they on their website they put pictures of supposed fouls by Juve players that weren't given. Juve then responded in kind. It just put this very poisonous cap over the game, and it really shouldn't have been.
You see, my only issue with this is that, you know, I understand why they're angry, because I would be angry too. You know, I was angry about the disallowed goal for Madrid too. What I don't understand is how about 8 people came out to speak against Antonio Conte and against Juventus for whinging about refereeing decisions, and everyone kept saying, oh, they're human, and you're not acting like a big club, and they went ahead and did the same thing exactly, you know. Where are Roberto Donadoni's comments where this is so nauseating to see, you know? I just think that it's a bit hypocritical at the moment to judge Juventus when everyone seems to go down the same route eventually. When they are under pressure, it's much easier to be classy when you're winning.
No.
What did you make of Buffon's comment? I mean, he was very honest, saying, I didn't realise it was over the line, but even if I had realised it was over the line, I wouldn't have told the referee. I think yeah, but he got also some criticism.
Buffon got absolutely crucified for that.
Captain, he's the national team captain,
and that's in keeping, of course, with Prandelli's whole thing about.
Welcome to the World of Football show here on Sports Tonight Live. I'm Mina Rzouki, and I'm joined by my usual co-host, Gabriele Marcotti. Hello, Gab, how are you?
Hello, very well, very well.
And of course, we've got our guest who's always with us now. It's Raphael Honigstein. Hi, Raph, how are you?
Mina.
That seems like a very strange hello. Today we're discussing all our usual teams, including some different leagues this time round. But we're going to start off with my favorite league, which is, of course, Serie A, because of all the drama that happened. Gabriele?
Well, it was remarkable because top of the table clash. I thought it was a phenomenal game. AC Milan and Juventus at the San Siro, and it was entirely overshadowed, I think, by two things. One, something completely absurd. Soli Montari heads the ball clearly across the Juve goal line. Gigi Buffon palms it back out. The linesman, for reasons known only to him, doesn't see it. I mean, it looked to me like the referee was going to give the goal.
Didn't he point to the centre circle, the ref?
He's pointing somewhere. I mean, we assume it was to the center circle. He hasn't spoken about it. But, you know, obviously you expect a referee to defer to the line, to his assistants in those situations. And, I mean, the guy just got it wrong. His career's basically over at this point. But, of course, that infuriated AC Milan, and I think understandably. Later in the match, Juventus had a goal, you know, the ethical code, and you know that's why Balotelli, for example, wasn't called up to the national team and so on. I think it's way out of line. I think the guy's being honest. It's after the game, you know, move on. I mean, I'm very willing to give him a pass on that point.
I also think the fact that Thiago Silva, who's my favourite Milan player, came out and said, "Hey, I do the same thing," and he's for me a pillar of respect, one of the greatest players, and he said he'd do it himself. And I think it's it's only fair to say, I'm not going to bury my team.
Right. Where do you think that leaves Juventus in terms of the momentum? Because, of course, you know, they came back very strongly and they got the draw. But did it, do you think, also put some doubts into their mind of whether they have enough firepower? I think, personally, watching the game, that perhaps they missed a trick in the winter break. Any half-decent striker they could have brought in would have strengthened them, and they didn't really do that.
And they brought in Borriello.
No, well, it's a very handsome Borriello, but still.
Very inept Borriello.
Well, but I think, I mean, I don't think there's a seed of doubt in their mind that wasn't there before. I mean, they've been very clear about this. Conte, you know, has come out and he said that. And I don't think he's just playing games. I mean, apart from the midfield, which I think is very good, and the goalkeeper, I'm not even sure about the defense and the strikers. I think there's at least half a dozen teams in Serie A who I would say have better strikers than Juve, you know, as a unit. But I think it's well, I think it's the opposite here. I think actually what we've seen is this belief that even against better players, you can outrun them and you can outlast them, and that's what happened against Milan. You know, for the first hour or so, I thought it was all Milan, and Juve just kept plugging away, and you know ended up with a draw. I
think also what's important to note about Juventus is that they had a rhythm established by playing those, you know, that 4-3-3 with having Pepe, Vucinic, and Matri up top. Quagliarella and Borriello just don't work, and I think he recognised that, and we only really saw a huge shift when the tactics changed and when these players weren't, when Vucinic was introduced, Pepe was introduced, and of course Matri. And I think that Matri's the only one at the moment who seems to be converting their chances.
Even then, it takes him about 4 or 5.
Yeah, but still, I mean, the point.
I mean, but 2 shots, 2 goals.
But
one was
I'm sorry, but
Mina,
but the point still stands. I mean, Juventus are very much in the running this year. Everyone else looks a little bit weak. Milan, by far the best team, but still they've had problems. Why not go and seize the initiative and bring in someone who will help you out in January? I
mean, Juventus has been losing, has been hemorrhaging money. They do try to run themselves like a business, and they're in this difficult knife edge where, you know, having to rebuild the team every sort of 18 months or so means you just lose more and more money. My understanding is they were in a situation where obviously they had to farm out, you know, Toni, Iaquinta, and Amauri, get those off the wage bill. They needed another body in. You know, I think with Borriello it was a take it or leave it situation. And I think they also thought that, you know, Matri and Quagliarella, they're kind of in-betweeners, you know, in the sense that I think they are very good players, but they're not players who are necessarily going to put Juve over the top. And so somebody like that, maybe what you do is, at the end of the season, you know, Quagliarella or Matri, you look to sell them, bring some cash in. Whereas if you bring in their replacement now, if you bring in a better player now, these guys don't play the rest of the year, and then you're stuck with another Iaquinta Mauri situation.
But you might win the Scudetto.
You might do, actually. That's really funny. There was a line in Gazzetta that said